Tyrese Haliburton's entire season has been defined by the word overrated, but yet he has never let that get to him. In an anonymous poll by The Athletic, nearly 15% of NBA players voted Tyrese to be the most overrated player in the NBA. But now he has defeated the Milwaukee Bucks, dominated the Cleveland Cavaliers, and has a 2-0 lead on the New York Knicks, winning back-to-back games in Madison Square Garden. So how is someone who is voted the most overrated player in the league get just 2 games shy of the NBA Finals? We are currently seeing a different, more lethal version of Tyrese Haliburton. You don't become one of the best playmakers in the NBA on accident. After being nominated as the league's most overrated player, his coach and several NBA legends quickly came in to defend him. His head coach, Rick Carlisle, called the polls bullshit. And NBA legend Dwayne Wade said on a podcast that Tyrese Haliburton is misunderstood due to his unique play style. And his former Olympic teammate and my future husband, LeBron James, has noted how quiet all his haters have been since the playoffs have started. But despite this criticism and having ongoing trash talk with a former NBA player Tim Hardaway Sr., Tyrese Haliburton has been lighting it up on the scoreboard, and he's making everybody pay. So let's dive in exactly to what he did against the Cleveland Cavaliers to show why Tyrese Haliburton is one of the most elite and even underrated guards in the entire NBA. Let's start with one of the most fundamental parts of his game, his dribbling and his ability to get past his man. Haliburton is not the fastest nor the strongest person on the court, but when the ball is in his hands, he is easily one of the smartest and craftiest players in the league. And a lot of this is seen through his hesitation move, mismatch hunting, and his ability to change pace. So let's look at his mismatch hunting, or his ability to find good matchups against the Cleveland Cavaliers. In this series, we often saw him hunting out Jared Allen, as he just does not have the perimeter speed to be able to keep up with someone like Hallie. Time after time again, he would routinely cook Allen, who is a pretty good defender on his own, but Haliburton would continuously get past him or use his patented step-back move on him. And while he's not the strongest at the rim per se, he definitely garnered enough defensive attention to be able to playmake out of these opportunities against a mismatch. And along with this, noting his ball handling, Haliburton does have a pretty quick first step. Even if a defender just slightly overcommits against him, he can make him pay in a drive using a floater or then kicking it out to a teammate. He loves to, like I said, mismatch hunt, but he also loves to use the corners, and I've noticed that his Indianapolis teammates tend to do a pretty good job in getting themselves open and constantly spacing out the court. Probably a shout out to Rick Carlisle for that one. Hallie does a great job playing at an incredible pace. He is constantly looking to push the ball up the court regardless of if it's a made bucket or not. And on top of all this, Haliburton is a very quick and efficient decision maker who rarely, if ever, turns the ball over, and he exhibits this both in transition and in the half court. His elite playmaking is also statistically shown in the playoffs. He is leading the entire league when it comes to assists per game, secondary assists per game, as well as points generated off of assists per game. On top of that, he is also 4th in potential assists per game, showing that his teammates have actually been relatively efficient compared to some other stars like Nikola Jokic, but there's definitely a little bit of room to grow from the playmaking standpoint, meaning we could easily be seeing Haliburton probably average closer to even 10 or 11 assists per game. And of course, we saw all of this in the regular season as well. Tyrese Haliburton was 3rd in the NBA in assists, and he probably became one of the most efficient playmakers ever, passing Chris Paul for the most 20-point, 10 assists, 0 turnover games, having 14 in his career. Mind you, he's only 24 years old, and Chris Paul is not. You look at these statistics and you look at some of these plays, and suddenly Tyrese isn't really sounding that overrated to me. In a larger sample size, Tyrese Haliburton was also one of the best pick-and-roll ball handlers this year, as according to NBA.com, he sat in the 96th percentile of all players. And while that is down a little bit this postseason, sitting around the 70th percentile, mind you, he's played against some elite defenses, especially those Cleveland Cavaliers that housed the Defensive Player of the Year, Evan Mobley. But despite this, Haliburton still did his damage out of the pick and roll. And what I love about Haliburton in the pick and roll is that it shows off every single part of his game. We see him manipulate the defense with his eyes, with his classic jump pass, or through his ball handling. But we also see a scoring side of him come through, and this can be seen usually through a floater, sometimes an open dunk, or a pull-up, something he was incredibly efficient with against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But before we dive into scoring, I do want to finish up his playmaking, and there's two unique aspects of that, and that is the way he passes. The first one is what I mentioned, is his patented jump pass. Now, nearly every basketball coach in the world, myself included, would discourage a player from doing that, as you're typically going up for a pretty big risk trying to jump pass, as if you don't find someone when you jump up in the air and lose your pivot foot, you'll be called for a travel every single time. But Tyrese doesn't get called for travels. He doesn't really get called for turnovers. He has the best assist to turnover ratio in the entire NBA. He uses jump passes at an elite rate. He's still even able to manipulate defenses. Multiple times against the Cavaliers, we saw him look one way, jump pass a different direction. This led to some of the most impressive assists and some of the most impressive passes we have seen all season. This is something Haliburton does on a day-to-day basis. It is such a unique and risky skill, yet there is nobody who does this as well and utilizes it in the exact same way that Haliburton does. Take a look next Pacers game, and you'll just see how often he actually does this. But beyond the jump pass, I also love his little float pass. He does a great job in lobbing it over defenders, which is something we saw often against the Cleveland Cavaliers. You have to remember, this team starts two centers. They basically have two 7-footers on the floor for a lot of the game. So for a player like Haliburton standing around 6'5", he has to be able to have that touch to get it over them. He also does a great job entering the ball into the post. Anytime they have like Miles Turner or Pascal Siakam in a mismatch, which happens pretty often as they're two of the best pick and roll players in the league. And like I said, Haliburton loves to look for mismatches. So he has great touch on his passes. He's a quick decision maker. He definitely has that flashy pass. He has an elite and unique skill in his jump pass. Playmaking wise, Haliburton is the complete package. Honestly, watching Tyrese Haliburton makes me think of a great quarterback. The difference between a good and a great quarterback is their ability to lead receivers to where they want to go. It's the ability of throwing to the spot versus throwing to where they are. Haliburton is probably one of the best in the NBA when it comes to putting the ball to where only his guys can get it. And yes, a lot of players can do this on lobs, but Haliburton does this on nearly every single possession and nearly every time he touches the ball. The control he has over his passes is absolutely insane. And mind you, his playmaking is probably only about half of the offensive engine that he really is, because in this series against the Cavaliers and even in Game 1 against the New York Knicks, Haliburton showed just how much he can score and how lethal he can be in that aspect. Now, Tyrese Haliburton's three-point numbers have been a little bit inconsistent throughout the season and the playoffs. In the regular season, he shot 38%. Currently in the 2 games against the Knicks, he's shooting about 32%. He shot 28% against the Bucks. However, against the Cavaliers, this man shot 45%, most of it being on pull-up attempts. And these weren't just simple three-pointers either. These were some deep, deep threes, including a game winner and multiple shots from the logo. But Haliburton generally does a good job without the ball in his hands, and really this whole Indianapolis team does that. He's usually constantly moving around a screen or drifting himself open to be in his own teammates' line of sight. While he may not always be running around screens in a Steph Curry-like way, he's rarely ever doing nothing when the ball isn't in his hands, and that's one of my favorite aspects about him. On top of that, he also has a variety of step-back shots and a pretty strong ability to create his own shot, and he really demonstrated that, especially against Jared Allen. Now, despite not having the prettiest jump shot in the world, he has a high release point, has a good flick of the wrist, and he does a good job getting separation. While I wouldn't want to see him taking as many deep threes as he takes, as that's usually just letting the defense off the hook, he generally does a pretty good job shooting, and for the most part, doesn't take too many contested shots either. He only shoots about 5 3-pointers per game, but they are typically very crucial shots, and they are not dumb shots either. And as I mentioned it earlier, we can't forget his crossover step-back combo that led to a game-winning shot, a crucial victory for the Indianapolis Pacers. And then he did that again against the New York Knicks. And last thing to mention about Tyrese Haliburton offensively is his finishing game. While I wouldn't call him elite around the rim, honestly he's probably pretty average, as he definitely struggles to finish when there are taller guys around. He does have an elite floater game. He does a great job of using the glass, and he shows off that same touch that we usually see on his post-entry passes. And every once in a while, if the defense lets him have it, he'll definitely finish the ball at the hoop, but I wouldn't really expect to see too many posterizers coming from him. But if there's a big man in front of him and he goes up for the floater, more often than not, I like Haliburton to complete that shot. 17 points per game on his shooting splits isn't really much of a score, but make no mistake, Tyrese Haliburton is anything but not clutch. Of course, he has those multiple clutch shots that I mentioned earlier, but according to NBA.com, in the clutch, Tyrese Haliburton is tied for the second most points per game, just behind Jalen Brunson and tied with Donovan Mitchell. He's also second in clutch assists, being just 0.1 assists behind Anthony Edwards, so he's basically doing it on both ends. And then his net rating in the clutch ranks 8th in the entire NBA, and 2 of the players he's behind are just his own teammates. And his offensive rating in the clutch, which would just be an interpretation of that of his play in the clutch over 100 possessions, is 2nd in the NBA, tied with his own teammate. Haliburton may not be much of a major scorer compared to someone like LaMelo Ball or someone like Trae Young, but he can definitely take over and put the ball in the basket when needed. You look at this Indianapolis team, and there's no one else that I would want taking a crucial shot than Tyrese Haliburton, and even though he wouldn't be the first on your list over the entire NBA, he has definitely been Mr. Clutch this postseason, and that means a lot as the New York Knicks were typically considered one of, if not the most clutch teams in the entire NBA this year. It is absolutely no mistake that the Pacers beat the Bucks. It is no mistake that they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, injuries or not. And now they are up 2-0 on the New York Knicks, another team they were favored against. Every time we doubt this Pacers team, they push the ceiling. They have no issue being the underdog, and they have a great mentality that I would not want to go up against. This is one of the hottest teams in the NBA and probably the best functioning offense of this postseason. And that amazing offense and this functioning team is being led by someone who was once voted the most overrated player in the NBA. And now Tyrese Haliburton is on one of the best playoff runs that we have seen in recent NBA history. If your team is going up against the Haliban, you are in trouble, and you better be ready to throw everything and the kitchen sink at him to hope to try to stop him. Don't let his stats fool you. Tyrese Haliburton is one of the most elite offensive engines in the NBA, and every single stat backs that up. So if you like the video, you know what to do, but that is it for this one, and I will catch you all later.